One of the most hated characters in Persona 4 is Ai Ebihara, which to me is pretty damn surprising. The Persona community is full of simps who love girl characters, myself included, and if you need proof of that, then notice how if you make a male character and give him a good story and some character development, everyone calls him shit and makes fun of him. But if you take that same character, twist their story a bit, make them a little more cringy, but you make them a girl, especially a cute one, suddenly they're in the running for best character. But for some reason, most people don't like Ai, who is a girl, but why? Well, see, the Persona community does always love cute girls, but only if they immediately suck your dick. If they're rude to you in any way, then suddenly they're in the running for worst character. Look no further than how people talk about Yukari, Marie, and of course, Ai Ebihara. Today I'd like to shed some light on all the simps out there, and explain why Ai does not deserve the bad reputation that she gets, and that why, in my opinion, she's actually a pretty decent character. So I will admit, when you first meet Ai, yes, she is a bit of a jerk. You first run into her when she decides to become team manager of your sports team to avoid being held back. She's mentioned to be just about as popular as Yukiko, putting her at the top of the totem pole. So this is exciting, right? No, don't get confused. Unlike Yuko from P3, Ai doesn't give a single shit about the team, and tells that to you straight. She's basically the team manager in name alone. For some reason though, despite being pretty rude, Narukami decides to ask her out and skip class with her, even though she treated him and the team like dog shit. Scientists still debate whether this is a potential simp moment for our usually Chad Narukami, but that's a discussion for another day. But either way, for the first couple ranks, she just does what she wants to do, like going shopping. And Yu for some reason goes along and endures her bad-mouthing. We learn that she recently became rich, further building her up as a snob. And this is where I imagine most people dropped off of the social link, hopped on Reddit, and wrote their graduate research paper on why she's a bitch. But here on my channel, we dig deeper. During a run-in with the sales rep, she mentions how she hates superficial relationships, and mentions that she likes Yu because he challenges her with some of his witty comebacks against her shenanigans. We also see her endure some trash talk from fellow classmates, which, while this certainly doesn't validate her being rude to most people, it is an important part to consider nonetheless, and is a part of maybe why she is the way she is. Eventually, she falls in love with your male sports team friend, and after it goes south, she pretty much threatens to kill herself, before finally confessing it all in what I think is the most important scene with her. We learn that she basically once looked like Hanako, and had a terrible school experience as a kid. She was poor and ugly, and everyone hated her, calling her names like Piggy Hara, despite being a kind-hearted young girl. Her family eventually moved once they came into money, and Ai also took this chance to improve herself, losing weight and transforming into the person she is today. But she laments that it wasn't enough, as Ko and Daisuke don't like her. But why? You see, Ai made a mistake in how she improved herself. She used the resentment she had against everyone as her motivator. She states herself that life is meaningless if everyone hates you, and deduced that her appearance was to blame. She improved herself as a sort of revenge, and now that she was on top of the social ladder, it was her turn to deal back the hatred that she had been dealt. From being hated for her bad looks as a child, she began to obsess over appearances and how they were the only thing that mattered. This accidentally turned her into the very person she once despised. A superficial, rude jerk, and she lost who she once was. She imagined that the people who loved her now for her beauty are probably the same kind of people who would have hated on her back then at her old school, and so she was rude and standoffish to them. She judged everyone else off the same standards that she had been judged, and I can't blame her for thinking that that's fair. But upon being rejected essentially by the boys she liked, she realized that her distorted view of the world, where appearances were all that mattered, had been completely shattered, and so she acted drastically while on the roof, threatening to kill herself as she found herself once again hated despite now having a good appearance, which she felt was to blame for her past hatred. She says it herself that her appearances were the only good thing about her, and so with that not being enough for Ko or Daisuke, she truly felt she had no value left. Thankfully, Narukami calms her down, and in her later ranks, we see the aftermath of her newfound revelation. That is, of course, assuming you go the friendship route. Ai's social link is weird in that there's diverging paths. One where during her meltdown, you comfort her by choosing to date her early on, and ultimately she breaks up with you. Or the one where you don't become her boyfriend and instead stay as her friend, with the opportunity to truly date her later. We'll be going with the friendship route here, The other route, in my opinion, actually kinda worsens her character development, as she just worries whether Yu is being genuine, though I'll get to that later. Going into the next rank as friends, she shares that most of her snobby tastes were just an act, and she realized that she wasn't being honest to herself, and that it was no surprise no one would truly like her beyond a surface level. She truly realized that she sucked as a person, and was acting how people felt a stereotypical girl would be like. She sets out to improve herself, and in rank 9, we see Ai go head to head with a jerk who's hitting on her. When he threatens her, Narukami steps in, only for her to take the blow for Narukami, which might not seem all too important, but symbolically is a huge step for her character. It shows that she's moved on from her superficiality for the most part. This is the same girl who said she avoided crying to avoid getting puffy eyes, and now she wasn't even bothered by the chance that hit to the face could leave a bruise. Her social link ends with your final decision to date or not to date her, but either way, she gives Narukami her compact, which is like this tiny makeup mirror thing. I genuinely had no clue what that was, so I had to Google it when I first played months ago, but yeah, she gives him that. That's the mirror she held on her ever since the day she decided to transform her life, stating that now she knows appearances aren't all that matters. She doesn't need this mirror to discover her own value. Rather, she can see her own value through the bonds she makes with Narukami and others. She can be a good friend to them, and through the kindness they show her in return, it'll serve as her way of seeing her value as a good person. It's a cute symbolic ending for her, and overall, I enjoyed her arc. People like her do exist. I've known friends in middle school who had a glow up and became snobs, and I'm sure you all do too. So even though she strayed from the right path and became a jerk, ultimately she realized that her actions were wrong, and began to take a more humble approach to things. I always say that I love characters who grow, and Ai Ebihara certainly grows a lot, and is one of my favorite social links in this game. I think people give her a lot of flack because she was rude at first, and they never finished her link, or because they believe she really didn't change, which is something I disagree with, or because they just don't forgive her for her past actions. The last big reason one might dislike her though, may be because of the path they chose for her. I would be pretty pissed if I wanted to date her, got the option to date her after her giant meltdown, only for the game to tell me that that was the wrong choice and that I'm locked out of it. Additionally, that route also just sees her use Yu to comfort her, and I think while the resolution is ultimately similar at rank 10, how she gets there isn't shown nearly as well. Going back to her behavior though, I can understand why someone might be apprehensive to forgive her, as I'm sure in many of our own lives, we've all run into truly terrible people who have a very similar personality to Ai at first. The stereotypical snobby girl whose ego is incredibly inflated. But Ai Ebihara grows from her past actions, realizes she was wrong, and apologizes. Not to mention that though her actions were terrible and inexcusable, I do still think it's important to recognize the abuse she underwent that made her this way. Her obsession over appearances clearly did not put her in a good headspace, and was borderline mentally ill, but ultimately she realizes how she was in the wrong. Personally, I'm not sure what more people expect from that. If a person is trying to change, then I can only be happy for them. And Ai clearly is trying to change for the better. She even reassures you that she is trying to be nicer to everyone upon your departure from Inaba. So in conclusion, Ai Ebihara is a girl whose values were rotted away after the abuse she underwent as a young girl, twisting her into the very person she once hated, only to ultimately come to the realization of how terrible she had become, thanks to Narukami's help. She's much more than just a random bitchy popular girl. She's a social link who self-reflects and grows throughout the game. Is she best girl in Persona 4 in my opinion? No. But is she worst girl? Not by a long shot. If only more people got through the barriers she set up through her dark past, people would see that she's just a girl who lost her way through mistreatment by others. I truly do think she deserves some more love, and I hope I convinced you to maybe see her in a different light. And with that said, that's it for the video today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. This is Heavenly M. Adios.